Hey gamers! Welcome to my game room. AJ from Rolling with the Roc, celebrating Gen Con Online Week with today's episode of Roc Reviews, Viticulture Essential Edition, designed by Jamey Stegmaier, Alan Stone, and Morten Pedersen, and published by Stonemaier Games. Now for this episode, I am only covering the Viticulture Essential Edition base game. If you look right here, you can see I will be covering in our next episode Tuscany Essential Edition, Visit from the Rhine Valley, and more Visitors expansions, all in the same episode. So this will be just Viticulture, and then the next Roc Reviews will be all Viticulture expansions. Now, if you don't know anything about Viticulture, it is a worker placement game where you are running your own vineyard and you are competing with other players to plant grapes, turn those grapes into wines, and then ultimately fill wine orders to get victory points. It is a different game depending on the player counts, and I'll explain that when we get down to the table, but I've played this game and Tuscany in the expansions at 2 players and at 3 players, and it's a very different game between those 2 player counts. I would assume between 4 players and 5 players would be similar, but not quite as different, and like I said, when we get down to the table you will see why. But before we do that, I do want to ask that if you are enjoying my content here on the channel, Rolling with the Roc, please subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video and any other ones that you've previously watched. Leave comments letting me know what you think about the games, if you see games on my shelf that you want me to talk about. And let your friends know about my channel. I'm still very, very small. I just recently passed 100 subscribers and I'm very thankful for that. But I would love to see my community continue to grow so that more people can find out about my content. So if you could please share it with others, try to get the publishers of games to come on and share my content as well. I would really appreciate any and all outreach that you can help me grow my channel. Thank you. And with that, let's go ahead and go down to the table. I am going to show you how to set up Viticulture and then explain how to play. Then we will come back and I will explain my thoughts on the game and give it my Roc rating. This is the setup for a 3-player game of Viticulture, and the first thing you have to do is take the 3 player pieces that have to go on the board. You have a rooster, which is your wake up piece. You have a wine bottle, which is what will mark your residual, and then you have this little cylinder here, which is your victory point marker. So we take our victory point marker and put it on start. We take our residual and put it in the middle there for 0, and then we'll put our rooster right here for now, and we do that for all 3 players in the game. So blue, yellow, and red. The next thing we will do is take all 3 of the roosters and we'll just shake them in our hand a little bit, not look, and pick one of them. And that is our first player. So they will get the first player token. And then it will go around the table in clockwise order to pick their wake up position. But before we do that, each player has to look at their mama and their papa. Now, each player is dealt 1 of these cards. However, it does say in the rules, if you like, you can deal 2 papas and 2 mamas and choose from those. We usually will play with that variant, but in this case, I wanted to show you, you get 1 mama, 1 papa. So for your papa, you will always get a grande worker. for your mama, you will always get 2 regular workers. Then everything else is different depending on the mama and papa. The papa will give you some coin and then a building or some coin, and the mama will usually give you more different cards. So in this case, we will get our grande worker and 2 regular workers, 2 coin, and then blue player can choose to get 4 more coin or the windmill. And what the windmill does is that every time you plant grapes in your field, you can get a victory point once per round. So at the very beginning of the game, that windmill is valuable, and the windmill costs 5 coins in the game, but right here you would only be getting 4 coins. Then the mama is going to give you 3 cards in those colors right there. And so you just do that for each player. I'll just show you yellow players, mama and papa. So mama and papa here, you're going to get, they can get a cottage. And what the cottage does is at the beginning of the fall season, you usually choose 1 summer or winter visitor. You can choose a second one if you have the cottage. So that's a nice card, especially at the beginning of the game too, because you can get more visitors. And then for red player, they can get a trellis right off the top, which is very good because that's one of the 2 buildings you need to plant specific types of grapes. And so having that right off the bat, not having to spend the action to build, is very important. And so each player will make the decisions and take their pieces. We'll go ahead and set that all up and then come right back. Viticulture is played over a series of years, and each year is divided into the 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. In spring, your only thing that you're going to do is take your rooster and choose a wake-up position. So we're going to have blue choose to get the extra worker, red will draw a green card, and yellow will draw a purple card. And so that'll be the order for the players to go this turn. So blue gets this is like a higher temp worker that you get for that year. And so they add that to their current workers, so they will have 4 for that season. In summer is your first action selection phase, and depending on the amount of players is which spaces you can use. In a 2-player game, you can only use the first space of an action. In a 3 or 4-player game, you can use the first or second spaces, and in a 5 or 6-player game, you can use all 3 spaces. Now, some of these spaces have a symbol on them, and this is a bonus action you can take if you place your worker on that specific space. So in this case of a 3-player game, we can use the first 2 spaces, which opens up all of the bonus actions for the game. There are no bonus actions on the 5 and 6-player spaces, but they give you more options to play there. So when you play 3-player, you get all access to the bonus actions. You can play an extra yellow card, you can draw an extra green card, you get an extra coin when you give a tour, you get a 1 coin discount when you build a structure, lots of different things that you can do there. And then when you enter fall, you will draw 1 visitor card, either a summer visitor card, which is the yellow cards, or a winter visitor card, which is the blue cards. If you have the cottage built, which is this building right here, which looks fairly similar to the cellars, but that is the cottage, and it goes right, oh, I'm sorry, that is the cellar. I already had the cottage on my board. That's the cottage. So I do apologize for that. It was already on my yellow board. So right here is where you put your cottage, and that gives you an extra one of these cards. So in this case, in fall, I could take 1 yellow and 1 blue if I wanted to, and we would add them. And then in winter is your second phase of action selection. And now you can only choose from these actions, whereas in summer you only could choose from these ones. And the tricky thing about viticulture is you only have in the first turn, you only have your 3 allotted workers, your 2 regular workers and your 1 grande worker, to do any actions you want to do for the whole year. So when you use a worker to draw green cards in summer, you do not have that worker to use in the winter. And that is the give and take of viticulture. Then at the end of the year, you will age your grapes in wine, and I'll talk about those. You would retrieve all your workers off the board. You collect any residual payments, which nobody has any yet. I'll talk about that. You would discard back down the 7 cards, and you would rotate the first player token, which is this little grape icon, to the next player, and we would start over with picking our wake-up positions. But I'll go ahead and show you a year of viticulture just like this. We have our players here. So red is first, and red has 3 visitor cards. So they don't have any grapes, so they're going to want to draw some grape cards. And they drew a card with a trellis icon on it. That means they must have the trellis built to plant that card. The other one, and that's a 2 red grape card. Their 1 red grape card does not require a building. But luckily for red, red does have their trellis built, so they can indeed plant that later on. So they have those cards. Then yellow would go, and yellow, seeing that red took green cards, they could go here too and get 1 green card. Actually, red should have got a green card, and they should have got a purple card. Yellow is going to go ahead and build a structure, and they are going to spend their 2 coins that they have, plus the coin discount, to build their irrigation building, which is this one. And that is the other building, like the trellis, that you need for planting grapes. So specific grapes require that you have an irrigation building. Then it would be blue's turn, and now they have that extra worker. They can use them anywhere on the board, just like they would their own. And they don't have any buildings. They have a windmill. They are going to also draw a green card. Now they drew 1 with a trellis, but they don't have a trellis, so they may have to build a building. And we would just kind of do this. Red is going to go over here and plant, so they're going to plant their 2. They get the bonus because they are growing on the bonus space, so they get to plant 1 and then plant an additional 1, so they can plant 2. They are going to plant a card with 2 red grapes and a card with 1 red grape and 1 white grape. And what that does is you're going to plant that in their 1 field. What you have is you have these 3 fields. You have a cost of 5 field, a cost of 6 field, and a cost of 7 field. And those are the numbers equal to the number of grapes you can have in those fields. So this is a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. If I put it in my 5 field, I could only add another 1 grape to that field. I'm actually going to be safe and plant that in the red 6 field for right now. So anytime they harvest that, they would get a red grape at a value of 3 and a white grape at a value of 1 at the moment. Now yellow will go ahead and they have a yellow card. And it does nothing for them. So they are going to give a tour and get 3 coin. And blue needs to build a building. They need to build their trellis, so they will use their worker and pay 2 coin to build their trellis and put it right there. And red is going to pass because they want to wait until winter to try to harvest their field. Yellow is actually going to use their, let's see, what does their blue card do? Not the best for them at the moment. So they're going to use their grande worker over here at the draw green cards. Now what the grande worker does is, you see in the green, both of the first two spaces are filled in already. A normal worker could therefore not draw green cards. However, the grande worker allows you to place them on the art of the action instead of on the actual spot, and still take the action, including the bonus. So in this case, by using the grande worker, the yellow player can take 2 green cards, and now they have a red grape of 2 and a white grape of 2 that both require a trellis. And so they will be looking to do that later in the game. Blue is going to go planting. So they're going to use their worker to plant. And like I said, they have 2 ones that require trellis. They are both a 1 grape for red and 1 grape for white. So they have 4 total there. And I'm going to place that on their 6. And that's actually kind of nice. You get 2 and 2. And then red passed. So we moved them over. Yellow has no more people, so they pass. And blue is going to pass as well. And when you pass, you move them over this line. So then we would enter fall, and everybody would get either a yellow or blue visitor card for summer or winter. And they've got a couple of different ones. We'll just give them 1. Yellow gets 2 because of their cottage. So we'll just give them 1 of each. And blue will get a blue one. And then we would enter winter. Now, red only has their grande worker, and they want to harvest a field. So they're going to do that. And this is where the grapes and the wine come in. You take these little clear grape tokens, and you place them in your wine area. Well, this is your grape area, I'm sorry. And this would be a 3 red grapes. So you take the little grape and put it on the red 3. And then you take the other grape and put it on the white 1. And then when you go to the make wine action, you would move these over to your cellars to make them into wine. And why you want to make wine is, let's see if I can find a better order here. I guess that's a good example. You have different wines that you can make for your visitors. You have white wines, red wines, champagnes, and there's also blushes. Here's a blush. So this one right here is a blush. These are white wines. This is a red wine. And the icon right there is a champagne. To make a white wine just takes 1 white grape. To make a red wine takes 1 red grape. To make a blush takes 1 white and 1 red. And to make a champagne takes 2 red and 1 white. And the blushes can only be value 4 and higher, and the champagnes can only be value 7 and higher, and you must have your cellars built to do that. And that's included in the build your structures actions. So the only other player that has a person left, a worker, is blue. They're also going to want to harvest their field, and they get a 2 red grape and a 2 white grape. And that would be a round of viticulture. So at the year end, you would age all your grapes and wine. So anybody who has a grape or wine on their board would move it over 1 space. If you have a wine, you can only move it over as far as your cellar. So if you haven't upgraded your cellar and you have a wine at 3, you can't move it over to the 4. Then you would retrieve your workers. So yellow would grab their 3. Blue grabs theirs, not counting the extra worker that's given back to the supply here. Red grabs theirs. We would pass the grape first player token over to red. Anybody who would have 7 or more cards would discard down. In this case, nobody does, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you would go through spring again, waking up now with the red player being the first player. And that is how you play Viticulture. Your objective is to complete these wine orders to get victory points, which is the symbol right here, and residual income, which is usually in the values of 1 or 2. And when you fill an order, so when you take a worker and you come down here and fill an order, that's not standing, you discard your order here, you remove your wine tokens from your cellar, you go up that many victory points, in this case 6, and you increase your residual by what it says, in this case 2. And then the first player who gets to 20 points, we'll just send them down like that. When you cross over into the 20-point area, that triggers the end game. And each other player has a turn to finish the game. And then whoever has the most points at the end wins Viticulture. I wanted to talk about all the different buildings in the game. So that is your windmill. When you plant on your field, if you have the windmill, that gains you 1 extra victory point. This is the yoke. When you do that, you can take one of your grapes up off of your field. They call that uprooting. Or you can harvest one field. And you do that, you place that action on your board. So it's not something that other people can block. This, of course, is the irrigation building, which helps you plant grapes. The other one of those is the trellis that you plant. This building is your tasting room. When you give a tour, if you have a wine in your cellar and you have the tasting room, you get a victory point. This building is your cottage. It gets you an extra visitor card in the fall season. And then you have your medium cellar, which lets you get wines of values 4, 5, and 6. And your large cellar, which gets you wines of values 7, 8, and 9. And then really the only other thing that needs to be explained in the game is that you can get new workers down here. So you can pay 4 coins and possibly get a coin discount to train more workers so that you have more pieces to use throughout the year. You can get up to 6 total workers, including your grande worker. And then you actually are able to go here to sell one of your fields. So if you're struggling for money and you're only using 2 of your fields, because at one time you can only harvest 2 fields at the most, you can sell one of your fields for a coin. You will flip that over, and instead of being in the field area, you would have a sold icon. And that is pretty much the game of Viticulture. You have lots of different grape cards. There's the same cards, just different quantities of each one. They go from one of the colors to 1 of each, all the way up to 4 red or 4 white. You have a million different visitors. These will do things that let you get victory points or draw specific cards or give you discounts on buildings. Those are for the summer visitors. Then you have all your orders, and these will range from, small victory points and small residual to bigger victory points and bigger residual based off of the specific wines and the value of those wines that you need to do. Like this one right here is only a 1 red and 3 white, and it only gives you 2 victory points and 1 residual. But it's a very easy wine order to make, whereas you could have something that is much harder, if I can find one. Like even this right here is a 7 champagne and a 4 white, giving you 6 victory points and 2 residual. And then you have more visitors in winter. I find that the winter visitors focus a little bit more on victory points. At least it seems like it. But yeah, almost all of these have something to do with victory points. And that's Viticulture. we'll go ahead, come back up off the table. We will discuss my thoughts on the game and give it my rock rating. So we'll be right back. Now time for my thoughts on Viticulture Essential Edition base game. And I really like it. The Wake Up selection in spring is actually one of my favorite ways of determining player order for the rest of the round. I really like that you can choose to go early and make sure that you go first, but you don't get as good of a bonus. Or go later in turn order to get a better bonus, but not necessarily be able to go first and get your choice of action. Now, that really comes into play between a 2-player game. In a 3-player game, like I said, I've only played 2-player and 3-player of this. In a 3-player game, when you can choose the first or second action spot, the going first is not nearly as important. When you play a 2-player game and somebody places their worker on the only space available for that action, and if you want to take that action, you must use your grande worker, it really changes the dynamic of Viticulture. And that's why I really think that the 2-player game and a 3-player game, and possibly even up from that, are just different. Because you have a limited number of bonus actions that you can take. So in a 2-player game, the visitor cards, to me, are not as valuable because you cannot use that extra visitor card bonus action that's available on the 3 and 4-player game spot in the 2-player game. And that's both in summer and in winter. So when you're playing a 2-player game, you can only play one visitor card at a time. When you're playing 3 and 4-player games, you can play 2 of those. So you're drawing cards, you're more likely to go for those card spots, get more visitor cards, and then play 2 of them at once to potentially get great rewards. And so visitors in a 2-player game, to me personally, seem to be less valuable. And in a 2-player game, it seems to be much more valuable to be able to go first in a round. So like in a 3-player game, we like to go for the extra worker at the very bottom of the order track. In a 2-player game, I really don't recommend that because you're going to miss out on getting your grapes cards. You're going to miss out on planting those. You're going to miss out on potentially harvesting your fields or making wine or filling an order. So you can only do so many of those in a turn, and if you're going first, you get your choice of what you want to do. So I find going second in a 2-player game is very detrimental, especially in the early rounds. You can find yourself falling behind quite quickly. Now you can make that up, but it is harder to do. So I really think playing this at 2-player and playing this 3-player are different. I enjoy both variants, but you have to go into them knowing that the game is going to play differently. You can't use the same strategy in a 2-player game that you would in a 3-player game. And now I haven't played the higher variants, but with opening up more, I don't think it will be as tight even if you go to 4 or 5 or 6 players. I really think that 2 to 3 mark is the difference, and that's it's a tight game when you play 2-player. It's so difficult, especially if you're the second player going, when you want to get grapes and then somebody takes it, or you want to plant your fields and somebody takes it, and then you want to make your wine but the other player took it. And while that happens in the other player counts, because you have 2 spaces, especially at 3-player, at 4-player probably is just as, maybe it's just as tight, but at 3-player you almost can do what you want to do almost all the time, and I think that changes a lot. Now, my preferred way to play this is at 3 players. I don't like the extreme tightness of the 2-player game as much. We play it, we enjoy it, we do have fun playing Viticulture at 2 players, but my preferred way would be at 3. The other thing I want to say about this game is that it has theme for days. And I'm not a wine drinker. I really don't like the taste of wine, but I can appreciate the theme of this game, how thematic it is. You are running your own vineyard. You are planting. You are harvesting those grapes, making wine out of them. You are having people come to your vineyard and give you bonuses. You are filling orders for people. It's very, very cool how well they captured a wine business, winemaking business in this game. I really, really like it. Like I said, I'm not even a wine drinker, and this is a very, very cool thematic game for me. There is one thing I do want to say about Viticulture, and that the box says 45 to 90 minutes, and we have played this quite a bit over the last 2 months, and I don't know if I've ever played a 45-minute game, and we are lucky if we're playing 90-minute games. Now, that may somewhat fall onto, especially myself, in our game group. I know I'm usually the slowest player, but I would definitely say you need a good 2 hours to play Viticulture. And that's not a bad thing if you have the time to do so. But if you're looking for a game and you think you can play Viticulture in 45 minutes, then, good luck. I wasn't able to do it. If you are, then it's great. And I hope there are people out there that can play this game in 45 minutes. But I would say it's more closer to 90 to 120. Now it's time for my Roc rating for this game. And Rolling with Roc gives Viticulture Essential Edition an Ultra Ball rating. And I give it a slightly higher Ultra Ball rating for a 3-player game than a 2-player game. Like I said, I do prefer to play it at 3 players. And the only downside to this game for me is the playtime. Now, there's plenty of people out there who love longer games, and if you're one of them, I fully understand that. And sometimes, I think before, I was into doing longer games too. But with having 2 younger children who can either wake up from their nap early or wake up in the middle of the night, it's definitely preferable to me to get games done as quickly as possible. And so that's the only thing that drags Viticulture down a little bit in my book, is that, like I said, we have trouble completing it in a quick amount of time. But with that said, I still very much enjoy the game. I love the thematics of the game. I love the mechanism of choosing where you want to go. If you want to be early in the player order and get less of a bonus, or go later and get a better bonus, and then choosing where you place your worker, when you're going to use your grande worker. I love the idea of the mamas and the papas giving you your starting resources basically at the beginning of the game, and that's different every single time. It is a fun, really, really good worker placement game, and I can see why a lot of people enjoy it. If you enjoyed today's episode, do not fret. There's more Viticulture from Stonemaier Games coming up next, and that will cover the Tuscany Essential Edition, the Visit from the Rhine Valley, and the More Visitors expansions. All in one episode. I'll tell you about them, how you play them differently, and what I think about each expansion individually. I will also have a review coming up on My Little Scythe, which is right here. That is, as you can see, we have Scythe 2, and eventually I will get to doing a review on that. We're currently playing through the Rise of Fenris campaign for that. But for My Little Scythe, it is a different game from Scythe, and I wasn't expecting that at first. But I hope you stick around for both the Tuscany and Expansions review and My Little Scythe review, all from Stonemaier Games. Lastly, I do ask again, if you enjoy my content, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. if you feel inclined, leave comments and likes to let me know that you appreciate this content, and please share with others that you know that enjoy board games. I really want to be able to have this community grow. I want to be able to continue to make great content for you, and I hope that you're enjoying it. So thank you very much for every view that you give me, every like and comment and share. It means the world, and I'm doing this as a passion project for right now, but I would love to see it become more. I just want to say thank you one more time. This was AJ with Rolling with Roc.